So today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual. Today there's going to be a lot of reading, and I mean a lot of reading. Which means 1, go get some snacks because this is going to be a story time. And 2, there's going to be a lot of takes for the voice recordings for me. If you're familiar with the internet, you may know about a small corner revolving around spooky stories. More notably, the creepypasta community. Creepypasta as a name comes from the word copypasta, which is, well, a piece of text that is known to be copied and then pasted in different parts of the internet. The phrase creepypasta was formed due to them just being creepy versions of copypasta. Genius, I know. Going back to the oldest recordings of creepypastas, we come to chainmails, which is essentially those spooky messages you'd get that be like,
"Repost this to 20 Discord servers or else Samara will come and sniff your toes at 3 AM. Ooh."
Like, we're all familiar with those. They obviously aren't real, but to those who think they are, it's very easy to see why these became so widespread across the internet. But back in the older days of the internet, these would have been spread by email instead, which is where the name chainmail comes from. Creepypastas themselves, however, seem to have originated somewhere on 4chan during the late 2000s. And around the year 2008, the website creepypasta.com was made, which is where you can find a large variety of creepypasta stories, which to this day is still extremely active as new creepypastas are made very frequently. And later on, in 2010, the creepypasta wiki and the subreddit r/nosleep were made and also became very popular places to find the stories. Some well-known examples of creepypastas would be stories such as Slenderman, Jeff the Killer, or Ben Drowned, or what is called the oldest creepypasta, Ted the Caver. On top of this, you can find different subgenres of creepypastas, some of the more notable ones being things like lost episodes, or video game creepypastas, or supernatural monsters. They can come in a lot of forms, whether it's a recreation of an experience, a video, or just some kind of email. And even one of my other favorites comes in the form of a suggestion box, so they can come in any form that you can imagine. But out of all of these, I want to talk about one which is definitely my favorite out of the bunch: Smile Dog. Smile Dog, in the most simplified explanation, is the image of a dog that causes nightmares and hallucinations to those that view it, appearing in said nightmares telling the person to spread the word by sending the image to other people so they also see it and the vision spread. And if the person doesn't spread the image, well, then they end up dead. The original story of Smile Dog follows an amateur writer who visits a woman of the name Mary E for an interview. Just before he's set to arrive, however, she locks herself in a room, refusing to talk to him. After sharing this experience, we get a series of 2 different emails being sent back and forth between the writer, Mary, and another person who's interacted with the picture. But instead of just telling you about the story, let's just read it together. This is the original story of Smile.jpg. I first met in person with Mary E in the summer of 2007. I had arranged with her husband of 15 years, Terrence, to see her for an interview. Mary had initially agreed, since I was not a newsman but rather an amateur writer gathering information for a few early college assignments and, if all went according to plan, some pieces of fiction. We scheduled the interview for a particular weekend when I was in Chicago on unrelated business. But at the last moment, Mary changed her mind and locked herself in the couple's bedroom, refusing to meet with me. For half an hour, I sat with Terrence as we camped outside the bedroom door, I listening and taking notes while he attempted fruitlessly to calm his wife. The things Mary said made little sense, but fit with the pattern that I was expecting. Though I could not see her, I could tell from her voice that she was crying, and more often than not, her objections to speaking with me centered around an incoherent diatribe of her dreams. Her nightmares. Terrence apologized profusely when we ceased the exercise, and I did my best to take it in stride. Recall that I wasn't a reporter in search of a story, but merely a curious young man in search of information. Besides, I thought at the time I could perhaps find another similar case if I put my mind and resources to it. Mary E was the sysup for a small Chicago-based bulletin board system in 1992, when she first encountered Smile.jpg and her life changed forever. She and Terrence had been married for only 5 months. Mary was one of the estimated 400 people who saw the image when it was posted as a hyperlink on the BBS, though she is the only one who has spoken openly about the experience. The rest have remained anonymous or are perhaps dead. In 2005, when I was only in the 10th grade, smile.jpg was first brought to my attention by my burgeoning interest in web-based phenomena. Mary was most often the cited victim of what is sometimes referred to as smile.dog. The being, smile.jpg, is reputed to display. What caught my interest, other than the obvious macabre elements of the cyber legend and my proclivity towards such things, was the sheer lack of information, usually to the point that people don't believe it even exists other than as a rumor or hoax. It is unique because though the entire phenomenon centers on a picture file, the file is nowhere to be found on the internet. Certainly many photo-manipulated simulacra litter the web, showing up with the most frequency on sites such as the image board 4chan, particularly the Focused Paranormal subboard. It is suspected that these are fakes because they do not have the same effect as the true smile.jpg is believed to have, namely sudden onset temporal lobe epilepsy and acute anxiety. This purported reaction in the viewer is one of the reasons the phantom-like smile.jpg is regarded with such disdain, since it is patently absurd. Though depending on whom you ask, the reluctance to acknowledge smile.jpg's existence might be just as much out of fear as it is out of disbelief. Though the website features articles on such other, perhaps more scandalous shock sites such as hello.jpg or 2 Girls 1 Cup. Any attempt to create a page pertaining to smile.jpg is similarly deleted by any of the encyclopedia's many admins. Encounters with smile.jpg are the stuff of internet legend. Mary E's story is not unique. There are unverified rumors of smile.jpg showing up in the early days of Usenet, and even one persistent tale that in 2002, a hacker flooded the forums of humor and satire website Something Awful with a deluge of smile dog pictures, rendering almost half the forum's users, at the time, epileptic. It is also said that in the mid to late 90s that smile.jpg circulated on Usenet as an attachment of a chain email with the subject line, "Smile, God loves you." Yet despite the huge exposure these stunts would generate, there are very few people who admit to having experienced any of them, and no trace of the file or any link has ever been discovered. Those who claim to have seen smile.jpg often weakly joke that they are far too busy to save a copy of the picture to their hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo. A dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of the camera, sits in a dim room, the only background detail that is visible being a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty. It is usually described as beckoning. Of course, most of the attention is given to the dog or dog-like creature, as some victims are more certain than others about what they have claimed to have seen. The muzzle of the beast is reputatively split into a wide grin, revealing 2 rows of very white, very straight, very sharp, and very human-looking teeth. This is, of course, not a description given immediately after viewing the picture, but rather a recollection of the victims, who claim to have seen the picture endlessly repeated in their mind's eye during the time they are, in reality, having epileptic fits. These fits are reported to continue intermittently, often while the victims sleep, resulting in very vivid and disturbing nightmares. These may be treated with medication, though in some, it is more effective than others. Mary E, I assumed, was not an effective medication. This was why, after my visit to her apartment in 2007, I sent out feelers on several folklore and urban legend-oriented news groups, websites, and mailing lists, hoping to find the name of a supposed victim of smile.jpg who felt more interested in talking about his experiences. For a time, nothing happened, and at length I forgot completely about my pursuits, since I had begun my freshman year of college and was quite busy. Mary contacted me via email, however, near the beginning of March 2008, to jml@.com, from marye@.net. Subject, last summer's interview. Dear Mr. L, I am incredibly sorry about my behavior last summer when you came to interview me. I hope you understand that it was no fault of yours, but rather my own problems that led me to act out as I did. I realized that I could have handled the situation more decorously. However, I hope you will forgive me. At the time, I was afraid. You see, for 15 years I have been haunted by smile.jpg. Smile.dog comes to me in my sleep every night. I know that sounds silly, but it is true. There is an ineffable quality about my dreams, my nightmares, that make them completely unlike the real dreams I have ever had. I do not move and do not speak. I simply look ahead. The only thing ahead of me is the scene from that horrible picture. I see the beckoning hand, and I see smile.dog. It talks to me. It is not a dog, of course, though I'm not quite sure what it really is. It tells me it will leave me alone if I only do as it asks. All I must do, it says, is spread the word. That is how it phrases its demands, and I know exactly what it means. It wants me to show it to somebody else. And I could. The week after my incident, I received in the mail a manila envelope with no return address. Inside was only a 3.5-inch floppy diskette. Without having to check, I knew precisely what was on it. I thought for a long time about my options. I could show it to a stranger, a co-worker. I could even show it to Terrence. As much as the idea disgusted me. And what would happen then? Well, if smile.dog kept its word, I could sleep. Yet if it lied, what would I do? And who's to say something worse would not come to me if I did as the creature asked. So I did nothing for 15 years, though I kept a diskette hidden among my things. Every night for 15 years, smile.dog has come to me in my sleep and demanded that I spread the word. For 15 years, I have stood strong, though there have been hard times. Many of my fellow victims on the BBS board where I first encountered smile.jpg stopped posting. I heard some of them committed. Others remained completely silent, simply disappearing off the face of the web. They are the ones I worry about the most. I sincerely hope that you will forgive me, Mr. L, but last summer when you contracted me and my husband about the interview, I was near the breaking point. I decided I was going to give you the floppy diskette. I did not care if smile.dog was lying or not. I wanted it to end. You were a stranger, someone I had no connection with, and I thought I would not feel sorrow when you took the diskette and part of your research and sealed your fate. Before you arrived, I realized what I was doing was plotting to ruin your life. I could not stand the thought, and in fact, I still cannot. I am ashamed, Mr. L, and I hope that this warning will dissuade you from further investigation of smile.jpg. You may in time encounter someone who is, if not weaker than I, then morally more depraved. Someone who will not hesitate to follow smile.dog's orders. Stop while you are still whole. Sincerely, Mary E. Terrence contacted me later that month with the news that his wife had killed herself. While cleaning up the various things she left behind, closing email accounts and the like, he happened upon the above message. He was a man in shambles. He wept as he told me to listen to his wife's advice. He found a diskette, he revealed, and burnt it until it was nothing but a stinking pile of blackened plastic. The part that disturbed him, however, was how the diskette had hissed as it melted, like some kind of animal, he said. I will admit that I was a little uncertain about how to respond to this. At first, I thought perhaps it was a joke, with the couple blatantly playing with the situation in order to get a rise out of me. I would check of several Chicago newspapers, online obituaries, however, proved that Mary E. was indeed dead. There was, of course, no mention of in the article. I decided that, for a time at least, I would not further pursue the subject of smile.jpg, especially since I had finals coming up at the end of May. But the world has odd ways of testing us. Almost a full year after I returned from my disastrous interview with Mary E., I received another email to jml@.com from elizaher82@.com. Subject, smile. Hello. I found your email address through a mailing list. Your profile said you were interested in Smile Dog. I have saw it and it is not as bad as everyone says. I have sent it to you here. Just spreading the word. The final line chilled me to the bone. According to my email client, there was one file attached called naturally smile.jpg. I considered downloading it for some time. It was most likely a fake, I imagined. And even if it weren't, I was never wholly convinced of smile.jpg's peculiar powers. Mary E's account had shaken me, yes, but she was probably mentally unbalanced anyway. After all, how could a simple image do what smile.jpg was said to accomplish? What sort of creature was it that could break one's mind with only the power of the eye? And if such things were patently absurd, why did the legend exist at all? If I downloaded the image, if I looked at it, and if Mary turned out to be correct, if Smile.dog came to me in my dreams demanding I spread the word, what would I do? Would I live my life the way it has Mary had, fighting against the urge to give in until I died? Or would I simply spread the word, eager to be put to rest? And if I chose the latter route, how could I do it? Whom would I burden in return? If I went through with my earlier intention to write a short article about Smile.jpg, I decided I could attach it as evidence. If anyone who read the article, anyone who took interest would be affected, and even assuming the Smile.jpg attached to the email was genuine, would I be capricious enough to save myself in that manner? Would I spread the word? Yes. Yes, I could. There are two main images associated with SmileDog, one being the regular version and the other one being the true form version. The origins of both of them are pretty blurry, but it's assumed that both of them are different parts of separate images combined together and then heavily edited to make the images that we know. There is a lot more to its story, and there are a lot more videos and information out there about it, so if you feel like going on to a deep dive about it, then you're in luck. And obviously, being a creepypasta, there are other variations of the SmileDog images and forms, but this is the original story of SmileDog, so we're going to be talking about the original images. And bringing our attention to the images themselves, I used to be scared shitless of these when I was little. And not just because I thought I was going to be having the hallucinations and the nightmares, no. It's just because of how uncanny they really are. They obviously look like dogs. It's pretty easy to see that the image is of a husky dog, but with the edited human-esque teeth, especially in the true form version, they just give off this uncanny valley vibe. And even now, as of writing, the image just gives me the creeps, and I know I am very much not alone in this opinion. But for those who don't know what the uncanny valley effect is, have you ever looked at something and it just felt wrong? It looks right, but not right enough, and that's what makes it look wrong. The most popular versions of this effect are objects like puppets, dolls, or in more modern times, those realistic looking robots. These are things that are meant to look like people, but don't quite make the mark to look fully human. This creates a very eerie feeling to those that look at them. Something about them is just a little bit off and therefore it scares us. That is the uncanny valley effect. Some more recent and specific examples are things like the 2026 polar bear that's been going around recently, or funnily enough, the new SmileDog image, which, if you want to know the origins of those images, the polar bear is just an AI generated image, and the dog was just a poor angled image from the person's neighbor's dog that came to their door instead of their neighbor's. But both of these images exhibit the uncanny valley effect. They look wrong. The polar bear's head is distorted and his back leg is too long to be correct anatomy, and the dog's eye and smile don't look like it belongs to it. Which also brings to the point that the uncanny valley effect isn't just restricted to people. Animals and objects are also included in the effect, which is why we can count the original SmileDog images to being connected to the uncanny valley effect. Which is why it's so fucking freaky looking. Creepypastas are often defined by their images that they are associated with, along with the actual writing of the story itself. I mean, if I say Jeff the Killer, you know exactly what image comes to mind, along with the fact that the original story is so poorly written, which just adds to how effective of a character SmileDog is. It takes this concept of the uncanny images that are normally paired with the chainmail messages and upgrades it in a way that even if it isn't real, after seeing it for the first time, you may be inclined to believe it, as more often than not, after seeing it for the first time, it will get burned into your memory, which goes for literally any creepy image on the internet. I mean, say that to younger me who just discovered the Mario ROM hack face for the first time. That was an image that was burned into my retina for fucking weeks. Smile.jpg is such a powerful image in how it's able to create an effect that makes it similar to its actual story, and creates a very believable tale that other creepypastas might not be able to achieve. And even if you haven't actually read the story of Smile Dog and you don't know what the image means, it's still a creepy image otherwise that makes you freaked out by it anyway. But for example, even if you believe that Slenderman was real, the only evidence of that happening is if he actually comes and walks out the woods. Like, he would have to be a fully physical being. However, with Smile Dog, it's only ever said that he appears through hallucinations or nightmares, and it's never explained how the people who fail to spread the word actually die, except from them, well, themselves. So, Smile Dog doesn't actually do anything, and at the very least, he could just end up causing something like a heart attack, which are all things that are very much real things. Like, there is no supernatural part of that. Those are real life things that can very likely happen, especially if you are under the effects that the actual image of Smile Dog is said to create. I mean, even look at just the case of Mary E. She went through that for 15 years. Like, obviously that is going to affect you in a way that would cause you to go to the lengths that she did in the end. Well, depending on how strong mentally you would be at that point. It is very common and possible that after seeing the image, you would begin to get real hallucinations and nightmares about it, depending on who you are and how scared of the image itself you are. And that's not because of anything supernatural or creepy, that's just how the human mind works. It's a lot like video game creepypastas in a way that both can be made real to an extent. I mean, much so for the video game creepypastas, but you get what I mean. While it might not be 100% accurate to the story itself, the Smile Dog image is still able to somewhat recreate an effect so similar to its main story that it's very easy to believe that is actually real. And that is what I believe is the best thing that a story can do. Smile Dog is my favorite creepypasta. It tricks you in a psychological way that makes you think it's real without any of the supernatural effects or repercussions. Which, if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of psychological horror. And if after this video you feel like going on a little deep dive about Smile Dog, there's a huge variety of videos about the topic here on YouTube that do incredible justice to the story. There are videos that go even deeper into the origins of the image itself, along with videos that just add to the entity and its hallucinogenic abilities, which are all really well done and are a real joy to watch. But for now, that'll be all. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next week. And remember, spread the word.